is Marc V. He's the owner of Express Employment Professionals and also happens to be my uncle. So that's what's good about him. Anyway, come on up, Marc, and he's going to have a presentation today. He does speaking that is not related to his business, and this is one of his presentations. So let's give a hand to Marc.
And if any of you are looking to hear stories or get the dirt on Eric, there really isn't any. He's been a great nephew. He didn't pay me for that.
Tough crowd.
We got that? It feels weird talking when somebody's taking a picture of you. So. Let's see, I'll tell you just a little bit about myself and then Express, and before I get into this, just in case you're wondering. I've been Midwest Regional Sales Manager for Tubular Steel for about 26 years over in St. Louis, and things changed there in corporate culture. It was time to go out on my own, and with my wife and I looked at a lot of different companies, both franchises and existing companies, and we settled on buying a franchise for Express Employment Professionals because it fit our skill sets and what we wanted to achieve in life. And as you can tell, I'm no spring chicken, so I figured for the remaining years of my work life, I'd like to do something that I really felt good about and counted in putting people to work. We get a thrill out of doing that every day. As I mentioned, Express is a franchise. There's over 500 offices across the country. It doesn't advertise. It just takes care of business by taking care of customers and putting people to work and letting word of mouth spread it. Our office is in Glen Carbon. We've primarily focused our first 3 years in Madison County. We've had substantial growth. I am a huge backer of growth on the east side. I think all that growth that they've had on the west side of the river, it's our turn now, and I see it growing. And well, I could go off on another tangent for that. But we've also expanded our business into St. Clair and Monroe County. We supply companies with people, whether they're looking for adding to their staff, replacing staff, project work, seasonal work, whether it's full-time, part-time, both on the administrative side from receptionists on up to senior accountants and everything in between, and then on the labor side, everything from general unskilled labor up to CNC machinist. So we've got a great group of people that work for us and with us, and people coming in all the time, as you can imagine. I will also tell you that in spite of all the economic news that you hear, we've had a great year this year. We've had a record year. We've already surpassed our numbers for last year, and we're looking forward to continued growth as well. So with all of you being business people, I think you need to hear that more often than not. So getting into this presentation, it's titled Generations. It was put together by some folks back at Express, and it helps. The thing that it's designed mostly for managers. I've done this presentation as long as an hour. I know you don't have that kind of time, so I'm going to squeeze it down into 30 minutes or so. And so some slides I'll skip over or rush through, but if you have any questions at any time, don't be afraid to interrupt. And if you have to leave to attend a business, please feel free to do so. Getting into Generations, this, from a manager standpoint, it talks about how with the variety of generations we have in the workplace now, it's become more important to become aware of that. One size doesn't fit all anymore in managing. And if you look at, I don't know how well you can see the numbers in the back there, but it's like 41 million people expected to enter the workforce in 2010. 46 million college ed boomers are retiring over the next 20 years. Almost 5.5 million by 2010, a skilled worker shortage. 39% of the workforce and 26% of the new hires have skill deficiencies. 65% of U.S. employment requires specific skills, and almost 3/4 of the U.S. workforce needs to be retrained to keep their jobs. There's a couple other things that companies need to take into account. The workforce is aging. The younger people that are in the workforce, they pay more attention to how their work and life is balanced. It's not all work for them. There's turnover issues, there's rising healthcare costs, and I think that something that needs to be pointed out here on the rising healthcare costs, it's not just that some of the procedures cost more today than what they did last year. it's also that they have procedures today that help us live our lives a lot farther than what our parents did back at the same age we're at now. All that leads to the rising healthcare costs. Back in late 2008, last year, there was a general tight labor market. Companies are moving at a faster pace today. Things are changing. There's a skilled worker shortage, and then there's an unskilled worker surplus. If you look at generations, and you want to understand it better, you're probably familiar with the baby boomers, and there's about 80 million of those. And older than them is the traditionalists. There's about 76 million of those. The Generation X is 46 million, and the millennials is 76 million. Now, I'll get into a little bit more details in that as we go on. And if you're asking why there's so few Generation Xers as opposed to the boomers, there's one big reason, and that's it. It's, I don't know if they're looking to avoid all the fun of the crying kids and all that stuff, but to get into what a generation is, it's roughly a group of 20 years that defines a group of people by their cultural events, or their culture and their events and important things that happen. The really important thing about this is the first time in our country's history where we've had 4 generations alive and working in the workforce. So what that means is when your parents were managing folks, they just had one pretty much group that they had to deal with. Now we've got 4 different groups. And that's what the bulk of this is going to go through, is identifying the differences in that. And what I hope you get out of this is a better understanding of why you think the way you do, and why those other people think the way they do that are in the other groups. If you want a better understanding of the time frame, the traditionalists are people that were born between 1922 and 1945. Right now that makes up about 10% of the workforce. And the baby boomers are born from 46 to 64. That's almost half of the workforce. Then you've got the Generation Xers, which are between 65 and 1980. That's a third of the workforce. And then the millennials, new kids on the block, 81 to 2000, and there's about 15%. And actually, before I got started, I was kind of taking a look at the room, and I think we've got a little bit of everything in this group here. Like, we've got all 4 groups covered. So if we take a look at the traditionalists and who they are, you can see pictures of people up there that were born in those time frames. And most of these people are influenced by the Great Depression and World War II. These people have habits. They're great savers. They're great givers. Got a strong work ethic and career and duty first. If you look at some of the events that happened that helped shape them, naturally there's a stock market and the depression that follows. There's something, the Star Spangled Banner. I mean, I took that for granted that it's been around forever, and it was kind of interesting to me that something like that seems so important was so recent to those folks. Social Security starts, then you got World War II, and then you've got the Korean War, and those events are what happened in the early years of those folks' lives. Okay, so for the youngsters in the crowd here, those of you that identify yourself as Generation X and Millennials, here's a little test for you. Do you know who this is?
Kissinger.
Oops, I went too fast on that. All of those who said Superman were wrong. Yeah.
Margaret?
That's right.
Clinton.
That's right.
Doris Day.
Right. It's not Hoss. It's not Hoss.
Gregory Peck.
Right.
Shepard.
Right, Alan Shepard.
Oh, he was the war hero.
Right, exactly.
Everybody.
Right. Now, I think I heard answers from mostly traditionalists and baby boomers in this. But it's interesting to note that the youngsters don't know who these folks are. And you'll understand why I do this a little bit more later on. The traditionalists, people that were born in that time frame, they've got a set of core values that are distinct. Most notably, they're used to working hard.